Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is David Freese. I'm the mayor of Tonganoxie. I am calling to order this July 18th regular meeting of the Tonganoxie City Council. Ms. Huntington, would you call the roll, please, and note that I am present?
Yes. Ms. McCutcheon?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Mr. Dale?
Here.
Mr. Hempel and Mr. Donnelly are absent.
Thank you. Would you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you join me in a moment of silence, please? Thank you. First item on our agenda is the approval of minutes for the regular meeting dated July 5th, 2022. Council, do you have any questions, comments, or conversation regarding the minutes from the last meeting? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion at this time.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Ms. McCutcheon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 3 on the agenda is the consent agenda, where we review the bill payments. Council, do you have any questions, conversation regarding the bill payments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. At this time, we usually allow a little open time for anyone who cares to speak. Mr. Porter, did anyone sign up in time for that deadline?
No signups, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Moving on to old business, there's nothing listed under the agenda. On item 5 is new business. We'll start with A, ordinance number 1505, text amendment to amend HBD or Historical Business District regulations. Mr. Brakovich.
Thanks, Mayor. So this item went before the Planning Commission. The property that prompted this is the former city garage on Main Street. The original applicant, the new owner, purchased the building, submitted an application to rezone the property, and which was the original guidance that they received from planning staff. The more we looked at it, although the intended use would fit the zoning change, the property could never meet any of the basic setback regulations, parking requirements associated. So we took a step back and said, could we make an adjustment or amendment to the Historic Business District text that would contemplate the reuse of these historical buildings that focused on two major things. One, it doesn't change the nature of the building because we wanted to help preserve that historical element. And two, works to ensure that the use within that building is still in conformance with what we would expect to see in a historic business district. And so the text amendment that was proposed to the Planning Commission after discussion had unanimous approval. That's been forwarded for your consideration this evening. Staff supports that, the Planning Commission finding as well. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions you might have.
Council, do you have any questions? Any conversation? Did you have any, I'm sorry, Ms. Stevens. Did you have anything more, Mr. Brakovich? Okay, seeing no questions, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion that we pass ordinance number 1505 to amend section 12012. The text amendment will become effective upon publication of a summary of adopting the ordinance, which basically summarizes the changes to the historic business district, allowing for historic buildings to be incorporated as is.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item B, consider approval of final plat for Coleman Estates subdivision. Mr. Brakovich?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this item, I believe, the applicant's engineer is here, should you have any questions. This item actually goes back about a year ago where the preliminary plat was discussed at Planning Commission. There were concerns from some of the adjacent neighbors that are county residents because this property is right on the city-county limits. The proposal hasn't changed. It's taking that acreage and creating 6 single-family lots. Originally, each lot was about an acre in size. Now we have about 5 lots that are around an acre and 1 lot that's a little under half an acre. And that's because the detention basin easement for stormwater has been sufficiently sized in that area. One additional item that we continued to explore was the creation of a HOA that would be responsible for the maintenance of that stormwater detention area. And so the applicant has completed all of those items and submitted that to the city engineer, city planner, and city attorney for review. And what's presented this evening is, in our opinion, ready for approval. We'll review it one more time when the final plat comes to City Hall and is ready for signatures to ensure that the conformance to everything that we've discussed over the course of this year has been put into place. One item, we don't have any publication requirements related to the final plat in terms of notice for people in the area. There was a resident, Robert Johnson, that was present during the preliminary plat discussion. That appeared in opposition. I had obligated to him that I would give him a heads up when the final plat was coming through. I contacted him today. He was very upset that I waited until the day of the meeting to contact him. He wanted time to review stormwater, sanitary sewer, or grinder pumps in use. Why is there a hammerhead being put in place? So he had a list of questions. I offered and did email him the final plat as being presented here, which again, in our opinion, addresses all of the previous concerns. But he asked that I enter for him into the record and that the minutes reflect that he was only notified today of the meeting. He hasn't had ample opportunity to review. I'm not sure what all he would entail on his review, and that he would still be in opposition, kind of no matter what. So if the minutes could reflect that, because I do feel like that he was very straightforward about what he wanted to say, should he have the opportunity to appear. And he's traveling, and that's why he couldn't be here this evening. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or like I said, the applicant is here, should you have any questions for them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brakovich. Ms. Huntington, are you taking minutes? You make sure that you got the gentleman's request.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
No, I recall the first time this was presented, prior to that in the, prior to that in the agenda packet at the time, the developer was planning for a retention pond to proactively prevent this, the concern that was prevented by that gentleman that night. So it looks like that is still in the plan with this final plat, the retention pond. That's my only comment. Seems like it was already going to be accounted for, those concerns, and that those are still in this final plat.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the final plat for the Coleman Estates subdivision.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item C, consider approval of purchase associated with the Kansas Forest Service Grant Award. Mr. Brakovich?
I think actually Mr. Porter and Chief Simmelman might handle this. Well, one of them is coming to the podium to address it. I nominate you, Chief. It's another great reflection on our fire department, always aggressively pursuing grant opportunities to ensure that our full-time and part-time and volunteer staff are always adequately equipped. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Chief.
Thank you. This is a match grant. This match grant is $4,980. We would be matching that with $2,490 of that, and then we would be reimbursed the second half of that. What it's for is for helmets, goggles, and gloves that we're going to use for kind of what we're trying to integrate is an urban interface / tech rescue team. The urban interface team is because we're having more and more development outside of our area. That urban interface is just what it says. It's kind of the wildland portion of what we do and the structural side of what we do, and do it in a lightweight, safer manner. We're doing this in partnership with the Kansas Fire Training Institute. They require us to have some equipment that we do not have and that we do not have in the county. And these, just the helmets alone with lights are $350 to $400 a piece. So with this grant, we'll be able to buy most of that equipment with a very minimal cost to ourselves. We're also pursuing another grant that we think a really, really good shot at, and that'll give us the rest of our gear and equipment and stuff. In the last 18 months, we've outfitted our entire staff with lightweight gear at no cost to the department through various grants. So, like I said, this is a match grant. I wish it was a full grant, but I'll take what we can get. Thank you.
Well, bravo, Chief. Thank you very much for all that you do to find grants to help us out.
Sorry, did you have any questions before I just
Yeah.
walked off?
Do we have any questions for the chief?
Okay, thank you.
No, but thank you for your work. Okay, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to authorize staff to use funds not to exceed $4,980 for personal protective equipment as outlined in the request for the 2022 Kansas State Forestry Grant funding, with $2,490 being reimbursed by the state of Kansas.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item D, consider approval of purchase of 2 bicycle repair stations for installation in city parks. Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mayor. This item we're excited to bring back before you. Ms. Stevens was instrumental in last year's budget development process and raising awareness about this potential initiative, and we've actually had some really good outcomes in collecting quotes for the equipment that we're talking about purchasing tonight. As described in the budget request, what's being proposed for purchase tonight is 2 work stands, outdoor bike pumps with gauges, along with signage that identifies them as workstations. These would be open to the public and available in permanent installation outdoors in city-owned properties. Preliminarily, discussions were to initially install one in the downtown Pocket Park, so it could serve 4th Street in the downtown corridor, and then the second one being installed somewhere along the wide trail that runs from generally the intersection of 4th and Main north and slightly to the west, or I'm sorry, to the east. The city owns and maintains several portions of property along that trail, and so we'd be happy to take your feedback as to where you'd like to install it, or staff can make that initial call on the second piece of equipment and get some feedback about how that's working and look at whether we need to make any revisions. We did collect 3 quotes, actually attempted to collect 4 quotes, and the low bid is not proposed for acceptance. The low bid was received from Park Warehouse, which was a vendor that we did have some issues with getting purchasing ability with different procurement methods from, and they also did not include in their quote signage, despite being requested to do so. They indicated they couldn't provide that. And so because of that, and the fact that we'd like to make one purchase for this project, Saris, with signage included, is the vendor that we'd like to propose you accept for a total cost not to exceed $2,978.78. The equipment's described in the attached quote documents, and we were excited to see that cost because we did approve up to $3,400 for 2 pieces of equipment to install in a city park. So very glad to get this outcome and happy to answer any questions you might have about it.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. In our discussions, we talked about trying to get a layer of data into Google Maps or Apple Maps or something like that so that cyclists could find that we have 2 of those here in town if they needed them. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor. We'll investigate that starting tomorrow. As soon as we get it installed, we'll do our best to advertise accordingly.
All right, thank you. Council, do you have any questions?
I'm curious about security at these things. Obviously, there's a number of pieces of them that are removable. What kind of security is there that might ward off someone from walking away with the wrenches and the screwdrivers and stuff?
That's a good question. We don't currently have cameras available in the downtown Pocket Park 24/7. When we looked at various options for this equipment, it's hard to avoid the circumstance that someone could walk away with some of it. The good news is, despite its value, a lot of the value is driven by the pieces that are part of the bolted down aspects. So we're hopeful too that since we have a complete inventory in the quotes of the minor equipment and tools, that if anything needs to be replaced, we can itemize that and either do it locally at a hardware store or order it on a one-off basis.
And the costs associated in the bids include all of those tools, but not piecemealed out to tell us what those replacement costs would be on those things, right?
That's right. Yeah, they're sold as a package by the vendor initially, and then it'd be up to us to go back and identify what's missing essentially and replace it.
I think they're a great idea, and a worthwhile project. I just, the pessimist in me knows that someone's gonna take stuff.
Well, and I Googled pictures of it, and from what's here, it looks like everything's attached,
Yeah, it's
like retractable cables.
yeah,
Okay.
they're attached with cables. They have them in the last campus where I worked. They had them all over campus, and they have them in downtown Lawrence, around different places.
Yeah, it certainly would be helpful if they're just, pull the wrench out on a cable
Exactly.
and
Yeah, they're made to be a
use it right
public.
there and.
It's like a public.
Everything's like attached to a little cable, and you just kind of pull it out and use it, and
They're made to be a public utility like anything else.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Any further questions? Okay, I would, if not, seeing no further questions, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the quote from Saris for the purchase of bike repair station equipment for a total cost not to exceed $2,978.78. And would, for one to be located in the Pocket Park and then one to be located at staff's determination.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dale, and thank you, Ms. Stevens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item E, Resolution 072201 regarding the governing body's intent to levy a property tax exceeding the revenue neutral rate. Mr. Brakovich.
Yes, Mayor. So we are coming to that point in this newer budget cycle where we need to notify the county clerk by July 20th if the city will exceed the revenue neutral rate. And so the discussion, and we've had a few budget work sessions based on this. Again, this is just to merely meet a publication date with an amount that we're not going to exceed, which we had done in practice and before, it just wasn't linked to the revenue neutral rate. We have a lot of budget discussion left in us and won't be really looking to adopt that budget until later in those early meetings in September. And so this, again, is just to meet the publication requirement. Mr. Porter might have a few additional comments to add in terms of detailed process.
The only other note I might add is we'll also publish on the city website this copy of the resolution once approved, as well as meet the newspaper requirement that the city will publish in the Tonganoxie Mirror at least 10 days prior to September 6th. So staff will take that and take those actions other than already notifying the county clerk. In the latest discussions too for the proposed mill levy of no more than amount, discussions have been had of proposing a mill levy of no more than 44.675 mils, which is a rate that's 0.601 mils lower than our current mill levy for 2022's budget year. So the amount again was 44.675.
Go ahead.
Oh, we're going to have a discussion, or I can.
Go ahead. I was busy writing. Any questions?
I was going to propose or make a motion, unless there's a lot of discussion, that we don't raise the mill, but we keep it flat so we can continue to provide services as prices go up for everyone, they go up for the city, and just keep our mill levy at the current rate, at the flat rate, moving forward for this year.
Is that the correct motion, Mr. Porter?
That is, if it includes the 0.601 decrease for the library
Right,
as
yes.
well? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And this is the fourth year we've kept that rate steady, if I remember correctly.
If not more, I
not
could
more.
go back and
Yeah, it
identify
hasn't been
that.
increased for many years, even during this time of inflation. It seems like a good move to keep it flat.
That's great work by our staff.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to, for the governing body of the, I guess, us, that's us. I make a motion to notify the Leavenworth County Clerk of the intent to potentially exceed the revenue neutral rate in the 2022 levy for the 2023 budget year. The included levies collected on behalf of the Tonganoxie, oh wait, I'm sorry. The total mill levy would not exceed 44.675 mils.
And just to clarify for the record, that's approving resolution number 07-22-01, setting the public hearing.
Ah, yes,
Thank you.
that's that one.
Okay, so motion's squared away. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item F, consider approval of 2022 mid-year budget amendments to the Police Equipment Fund and Water Capital Fund. Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't belabor these items, and so I'll give a brief summary, but more detail is available in the agenda statement and attachments provided in the agenda packet this evening. The two funds that we're talking about mid-year adjustments to are, again, the Police Equipment Fund and the Water Capital Fund. Each of these funds is not budgeted, or I guess required to be budgeted through the state budget forms, which include separate notice provisions for any sort of mid-year amendment. The City Council can merely make a motion and consider a vote on that motion to change either the expenditure or revenue budget for these funds. In the state's parlance, they're called non-budgeted funds, actually. The Police Equipment Fund was previously increased in budget authority for expenses and revenue expectations in January with the purchase of new radios through a grant program. That process was completed, as well as the other major capital initiative this year with the outfitting or partial outfitting through this fund of 3 Tahoe vehicles that were purchased and are almost completely now installed in the fleet. The police equipment fund, though, does have other periodic costs to incur for things like vest replacements for aged out vests, new vests for new employees, ammunition for training and duty purposes, and other periodic equipment purchases that the department makes. When we've looked at our budget capacity towards year end, once we complete the vehicle purchasing or vehicle purchase outfitting, we're looking to be too close to budget authority for comfort, and so staff are requesting an additional expenditure authority in the amount of $7,000 for that fund. The total expenditure budget for the fund would then move to $69,226 for 2022. And at the worst case, if we didn't collect $1 more in revenue and we spent every dollar authorized, the fund would still maintain at least $16,675. We don't expect that to be the case, but that's just given as a parameter of what could happen based on this adjustment. I'll switch to the Water Capital Fund. We currently have on reserve a little over $500,000 in this fund, into which the majority of the revenue is collected by a share of the water connection fees. We call them system development fees that new customers pay. As they add to our utility because of building a new building or anything that needs service by a new water meter, they pay us our fee, and we in turn purchase and coordinate the installation of the water meter device that's used to set the utility billing fees and usage records. Because we've had 2 new customers of note in the community added to the utility, one with a 10-inch meter, one with a actually 10 and a 3-inch meter, and then another with a 2.5-inch meter, which are abnormally large sizes and large costs. We do need to request a budget authority adjustment in the amount of $80,000 for that fund, which will allow us to procure those meters and complete the payment for them. That total budget authority would go up to $225,000 in the Water Capital Fund, and we still anticipate, again, in a worst-case scenario, maintaining $401,000 in funds on hand. So both these budget amendments are fairly routine in nature, but we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And lastly, I guess page 2 of the agenda statement does include a draft motion that would approve both these amendments in the amounts referenced in the agenda statement. But happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion at this point. Just one motion for both items.
The Water Capital Fund, I mean, it's good news that there are new, larger users here in the community, and I know that that will pay back in dividends in the future. So I'll make a motion to approve the 2022 expenditure budget amendment for the Police Equipment Fund and for the Water Capital Fund as described in the agenda attachment.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Moving on to the city manager agenda, Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mayor. Switching from budget to budget. The June financial report and quarterly treasurer's report are included in your agenda packets for reference. The executive summary, the first page of the report, details where we stand through 50% of our fiscal year. It's in an exceedingly positive position. We've collected almost 68% of revenue budgeted this year and spent only 43% of our expenditure authority in all funds. That's, again, due to our work by all of our department heads and staff that look to minimize cost and be efficient in our activities and our purchases that we make of necessary equipment and commodities and contracts. We do look at our revenues to date and make note that we did receive and deposit our second of our 2 largest property tax remittances from Leavenworth County. And so when you look at the fund balance report, which is near the end of the report, the general fund, the debt service fund in particular, do show an larger than normal fund balance number, and that's because of those 2 major deposits. They're intended to cover costs for 12 months of the year. that we budget out, but we do collect them in two big chunks, both in the first 6 months of the year. Our ARPA funds, we're happy to report we did collect the second tranche of those. And so we currently stand at $765,858.42 in funds available. We expect that to be the full complement of funds the city will be eligible for, but we'll keep you apprised if we hear of any other new developments. Our reporting for that is completed in April of each year, and we did do that several months ago. We do have the opportunity with upcoming projects like the wastewater treatment plant, phase 1 or 2 upgrade, to spend that all in one significant chunk or to make other policy decisions that you elect to use those funds for. We referenced in the executive summary 2 upcoming budget amendments. We made 2, and actually the most recent action that you took this evening. The ones I want to point out for future meetings that will require state budget form completion and notices as required by the state statutes are a 2022 increase in special highway fund expenses, 2022 fall expenses in the water fund for additional purchase of water from BPU and costs that we didn't anticipate when we built the 2022 budget, with the addition of some new large users. And in the sewer funds, potentially some increases to allow for the design cost of our wastewater treatment plant expansion project and new sewer treatment that we expect to receive at the end of this year. We also maintain a good look at our general fund as we go forward. Right now, we don't think we need it, but at the end of the year, we may need a small adjustment in the general fund if we have unforeseen costs like legal fees or contracts that were exceeding what we previously expected. So moving forward, I won't belabor the next couple pages of the report with major revenues, major expenses, but all funds I'll point out are well below their expenditure authority for the year on page 2. Page 3 also illustrates the same information for our utility and non-utility capital type funds. And again, we're in the same position with the legal expenditure limits that we're under those at this point in the year. Sales and use tax continues strong performance. City sales tax is about 14% ahead of where it was last year in collections to date through 6 months of the year. Use tax is up over 50% at 58%. This maintains a momentum that's been exceedingly strong all year long, and so we're happy to see this continue, although we do continue to track it closely as other things are going on in the general economy that provide unrest or unease, and so we do watch this very closely. The Capital Projects Fund also receives sales tax, the city's share of a 1% countywide sales tax, and that's somewhat similar in change from last year, 7.8% increase on the sales side and 37.2% on the use tax side, with use tax being about half of the collection of sales tax in gross receipts. Switching to expenditure detail, which is page 6 of 8 in the report document, we do have some interesting developments with cost of commodities. We tracked these last month: fuel and oil, electricity, and gas and propane. Last month, fuel and oil was, I believe, close to 10% ahead of the prior year's pace. Based on the end of June detail, that's now risen to a 46% increase. So when we look ahead at the end of the year, excuse me, we know that that line item is one that we can expect to be over budget in and need to make up for elsewhere in our departmental budgets. Electricity is strangely almost exactly where it was last year. We have heard from the electric providers in our community that we can expect some increase due to input costs that they experience and pass on to us as customers, as well as the residents of our community. So that's another item we'll continue to track the rest of the year, even though right now it shows little change from last year's pricing. Gas and propane did go up 8% compared to last year, which was a slight increase from what we registered when we compared this last month. So overall, some inflationary trends, but primarily focused in gas and diesel prices for the most part. Any questions about that? Or
No,
okay.
definitely not a surprise.
Yes.
Gas
Page 7 of the report shows 2022 budget initiatives. You can see that a majority of the items have been checked off as completed. I highlighted the bicycle repair stations that was approved earlier this evening by the city council. We do have a few small items remaining and several significant capital projects that are just simply not completed, but have either started or in design efforts to date. Page 8 of the report shows where we are in the budget timeline for next year, and the remaining pages show fund balances across all city funds, expenditure budget authority and all budgeted city funds, and finally the quarterly treasurer's report that we'll publish in the newspaper as required by state statute. That illustrates receipts, expenses, and ending balances, as well as outstanding debt for the city's current GO bond and temp note and lease purchase obligations that we hold. Happy to take any questions you might have, but just want to conclude our report by saying halfway through the year, we're in great shape and continue to look closely at the remaining part of the year.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Council, do you have any questions? Comments? No, it looks great. Thank you.
Fabulous as always.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda is the city attorney agenda.
No items, Mayor.
Okay. A city council agenda. Does anyone have a city council agenda? Nothing? Mayor agenda, I need to appoint the city position to the Tonganoxie Recreation Commission. I would like to appoint Lisa Large Totten to that position. She's been a great board member since I was on the board way back when, and she lives in the city limits, and that will allow a non-city resident to take over her at-large position and get us square with where we need to be with city and county and district positions. Is that okay with everyone?
Sounds good.
All right, thank you very much.
We might take a vote of the council, either voice vote or a roll call.
Sure, thank you. Yes, so I'd like to nominate Lisa Large Totten to the Rec Commission. Can I get a motion for that, please?
I'll make a motion to accept your nomination.
All right, thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, thank you very much. I believe that's the end of business. Mr. Dale, did you have something you needed to say?
I will next make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank you, sir. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you. See you in a